The land of Israel isn't what you think. Pay attention. Abraham is the father of the Jews. God called Abraham out of his country to a new land that God would show him. Now, where was Abraham from? Acts 7:2 tells us that God called Abraham out of Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia is modern-day Iraq. So all that are natural-born Jews, which are the seed of Abraham, are from Iraq. Iraq is a far cry from Africa. Now, where is the land that God promised to give Abraham? In Genesis 12, verse 5, it says, "And they went forth into the land of Canaan, and into the land of Canaan they came. And the Canaanite was then in the land." Now look at what the Lord tells him. "And the Lord appeared to Abraham and said, Unto your seed," we'll come back to that, "will I give this land." So the land that the Lord promised to give Abraham was the land of Canaan, where the Canaanite dwelt. Now, what's interesting is that the land that God promised to give Abraham and his seed, many believe to be this little slither of place right here. But look at what God tells Abraham in Genesis 15:18. He says, "Unto your seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt," that's the Nile River, "unto the great river, the river Euphrates." So from the Nile River in Egypt all the way to the Euphrates River in Iraq is the land that God promised to give Abraham and his seed. So here's Israel, and here's the Nile River, and Euphrates is all of this. So God promised to give them from the Nile River, all of Arabia, to the Euphrates River in Iraq. Now, remember the seed that God planned to give this land to along with Abraham? Many people believe that these are the descendants of Abraham, but descendants are only a partaker of what is promised to the seed. Galatians 3:16 tells us, "Now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. He saith not unto seeds as of many, but as of one, and to thy seed, which is Christ." So the promises were made to Abraham and to Jesus. And when he returns, he's going to take the land that was given to him. And the seed of Abraham will dwell in that place during the 1,000-year reign of Christ on earth. This is the true history of Israel. Pay attention. Abraham was a Hebrew who was also the father of the Jews. But before Abraham was a Hebrew, he was a Gentile. He was a Gentile because he was from Mesopotamia, which is modern-day Iraq. And what is a Gentile? The word Gentile means nations, or the people who are not descendants of Abraham and his promised seed. Now, it's important to note that before God called Abraham, there were no such people that were called Hebrews, and there were no such people that were called Jews. Abraham was Gentile, just like the rest of us. He was part of the nations. And another word for Gentile outside of nations is heathen. And the word heathen denotes to the nations being godless. Look at Psalms 2 verse 1. It says here, "Why do the heathen rage?" This is talking about the temperament of the nations towards God. That word heathen, with the little one next to it, means Gentiles. So now the question is, why did God call Abraham? Because God wanted to establish a people for himself in the earth, because the world was godless. And not only did God want to establish a people for himself, but through the seed that would be born through this lineage, God would redeem the godless heathens back to himself. And this is what the call of Abraham is all about. Genesis 22:18. "And in your seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed." Now, who is the seed that would bless the nations? Many people believe that these are the descendants of Abraham, but Paul tells us the truth. Galatians 3:16 tells us, "Now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. He saith not unto seeds as of many, but as of one, and to thy seed, which is Christ." And how has Christ blessed all nations? In Acts 3:25, Peter tells the Jews how Jesus has blessed them. "And in thy seed shall all the kindreds of the earth be blessed. And here's the blessing. God, having raised up his son, Jesus, sent him to bless you in turning away every one of you from his iniquities. In other words, the blessing that God promises that will come upon the nations is the salvation that comes through Jesus Christ to turn you away from sin so that you can be a part of the family of God. Now, does this eliminate the seed of Abraham? No. Does this cause the church to replace Israel? No. But this puts the emphasis of Israel back into its proper place. Jesus, the land of Israel. Who owns it? The answer might shock you. Pay attention. In Genesis 15, God makes a covenant with Abram, who is also known as Abraham. And this covenant contains various promises made by God to Abraham. Verse 18 contains two of the promises. Look what it says. In the same day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, unto your seed, that's one, he promises him a seed, have I given this land, he promises him land, from the river of Egypt, that's the Nile River, unto the great river, the river Euphrates. That's from the Nile River in Africa to the Euphrates River in Iraq. All of that. Now I need to go over the word covenant, because the same covenant that God makes to Abraham is the same covenant that he makes with his seed. And who is his seed? Is it the Hebrew lineage or is it someone else? Some related words to the word covenant is agreement and contract. But if we want to be precise, a covenant is a testament, and a testament is a will. And we know that a will, or a last will and testament, is a contract that is drawn up that allocates the property and assets of one that is about to die to an heir. And what's interesting is the book of Hebrews speaks the same thing. In Hebrews 9:16, it says, for where a testament is, there must also of necessity be the death of the testator. So in other words, in order for the covenant to go into effect, or in order for the heir to take possession of the property, it is necessary that the testator, or the one that initiates the covenant, dies. And with the covenant between God and Abraham, God is the one who initiates the covenant. I think you're seeing the connection. Now in Galatians 3:16, Paul tells us who the seed is that God made a covenant with along with Abraham. Now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. He saith not into seeds as of many, referring to descendants, but as of one, into thy seed, which is Christ. So Yahweh makes a covenant with Abraham and to Christ, who is his son, the only begotten son that would be born in the world 2,000 years after Abraham. And so from Abraham to Jesus, God must preserve a lineage that will one day bring forth the promised seed, who is also the Messiah of the entire world. Now remember, the testator must die in order for the covenant to go into effect. And 2,000 years ago, Jesus shed his blood on the cross, dying for the sins of the world. Matthew 26:28, for this is my blood of the New Testament, which was shed for many. So the covenant that God made with Abraham 4,000 years ago is the same covenant that Jesus instituted 2,000 years ago. And that is the covenant that all Christians are under. And those that accept the promised seed as their Messiah will also inherit the possessions promised to the Messiah. Here is a full-length video on this topic.